Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
Never better.
Good.
How's it going?
I feel a little silly because we're about to have this whole podcast on health, and I'm on the tail end of what was a very gnarly cold. Luckily, not the Rona, but a gnarly cold, no less.
You get colds in Arizona?
I have not had a cold in any location in probably 5+ years, but when you have little ones running around, they are petri dishes of just germs and sicknesses and all of the things. So I acquired this for my kid.
Well, I feel like we didn't talk for, I was looking, I think it was over a year ago. But on Instagram, I keep up with everything. So
Yeah,
it feels like we've talked, but a lot's happened in the last year, huh?
it has. Yeah. I mean, the world shut down. We had a human. You're still riding your bike and having amazing barbecue on the weekends.
We had a human. How did having the human go for you and Chris?
It was good. I mean, we kind of count ourselves as lucky that we actually got to have him during a pandemic because it like surprisingly allowed us to slow down, not have to go a bunch of places. We did not have to see a bunch of people we didn't want to see. It sort of kind of resolved, I think, a lot of the stresses that come with, having a whole new person in your family and a newborn. We actually, kind of laughed that we're a little bit grateful that we didn't have to, tell our family not to come and no need to come visit us. You can stay there. We didn't have to have any of those conversations. So we're getting a little cabin fevery now. I think everybody is, but, to kind of get out and start doing real life again with him, especially.
He's almost one.
Almost a year. Yeah. In April, he'll be a year. So that happened.
Dexter, right?
Dexter. Yeah.
Dexter. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm curious, all our listeners out there, I need to look up the episode that you were on, but you really were a digital nomad that became I don't know, what do they call it when you transition back to regular life and which was prompted by having a human, but how are you and Chris? Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I think there again, kind of a necessary gratitude for, we posted up in Arizona in January and then everything shut down, in March, I think. So
January, just for everybody, January 2020.
January 2020, yes. So January 2020, we posted up, found a house, started furnishing, and then end of February, beginning of March, I think kind of everything shut down. So good timing for us because we got stuck in a location, A, we wanted to be, B, that was a home of our own, and C was, all of our own things as opposed to like Airbnb furniture and mattresses and all of that good stuff. But we certainly have taken advantage of the time being homebound, not only from having a new baby, but also just from a business perspective. We really decided to lean in this last year on, okay, how are we going to evolve? How are we going to level up? We aren't traveling. We have more time available now. That we're not spending with Dexter, that is. So, the time that we're not traveling, how can we utilize that in a way, to kind of spend the time to build? And so we've just been so busy with business too that it's kind of alleviated some of that gripe of not being able to travel. But we're nearing the place of getting ready. We're chomping at the bit a bit to get out there and start nomading around again.
You're gonna do that again?
We're thinking so, yeah. I don't know that we'll ever do it in a way where we don't have a home base. I think it's really challenging not to have a home base. And as you know, the last time we talked, we didn't. We also acquired a lot of crap in the meantime. So,
Yeah, I keep looking at all these rooms that I think last time we talked to you, were really grateful that you didn't have all this stuff. And then it started with a living room, if I remember, where you do your exercise. And then there was a sofa. Then I noticed some things on the wall. And then I recently, which we can talk about later, saw a freezer, which pretty much means you are a deep freezer, that pretty much means you're probably going to stay in that spot for a minute.
Yeah, we are full on doing the domestic home situation. Like we're here, we're landed, we're grounded. Yes, the deep freezer, which is not being used to freeze any meats, but probably does align quite nicely with the topic of our conversation today, is something we're actually using for recovery. So Chris, my husband, took some time to seal all the holes and all the portions on the bottom that could potentially leak, and we're using that for ice baths at this point.
Yeah,
So
so today, yeah, we're going to talk about holistic health and your journey. And you used to coach it,
mhm.
which I was thinking, I don't have a cold bath yet, but I take cold shower at the end, just to be clear, as long as I can do. And I was thinking today, I was saying, well, Whitney's really a Renaissance woman, because you're like this corporate lawyer, right? And then you ditch this whole corporate thing. Somewhere between there, you did coaching for health and holistic stuff. Then I don't even know what you and we can talk about. I don't even know what you and Chris are even doing for business now. Then you had this human. You went on another fitness journey. Then you tell me Chris sort of adjusted his nutrition, and I don't want to say it beat cancer, but you can tell me that or not. And then yeah, it's like you're a real Renaissance woman.
I appreciate you thinking that. I mean, I think you're making it sound a little more exciting than it is. I think it's really just us trying to live our best lives, figure out how to do that. What does it look like in terms of financing? What does it look like in terms of location? What does it look like in terms of our mindset, body, general health and wellness? And then kind of all the elements of adding in a pandemic, a new baby, new businesses, right? All of those things layered on top of one another. So yeah, you summarized it greatly. Went from being litigator to, okay, I'm never touching that with a 10-foot pole. Let's try on health and wellness. That was something that really suffered when I was litigating. So let's try on health and wellness for a second. I got my holistic nutrition certification and was doing some coaching for that for a while. That felt great, but I kind of was missing that, I guess what I would say more of like a higher level thinking kind of element to that. So got pulled back in, kind of kicking and screaming into legal, but through the technology lens. Started this consulting business, and that's really what's taken off now. So I'm full time in that. This consulting business has also sort of turned into, just kind of general legal technology advice and advisory positions, and data and AI and how all of those kind of intersect at the area of law. Chris is still doing, everything he has been doing with finance. So that not much of that has changed. He has become more obsessed with biohacking, which great term from Dave Asprey, which, kind of has then been the precipice for let's get a freezer that I can, quite literally chill in at whatever interval that I want to be. And just really trying to elevate, his body and mind so that he can be around and energized for as long as possible.
Well, it looked like you lost some weight.
I mean, from having a baby for sure.
No, you lost some weight for sure. I think he lost some weight too, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a constant, like, I think evolution, right? And constant ebb and flow. And as your body's changing and as we're getting older, your hormones are changing. So it's a bit of a moving target, with just what that looks and sounds like and what feels good for your body. I think I've shared with you before, but Chris used to own a CrossFit gym. And so he competed in that space, was, very, very active, almost to the point of a little bit too much. And it sort of feels like that pendulum has actually swung the other way now. He does 10 or 15-minute workouts and nothing more. It is optimizing for, how can I make sure that I'm acquiring the muscle density that I want, losing fat, but how can I also ensure that I'm getting enough recovery? What does that look like in terms of sleep, in terms of diet, in terms of actual recovery mechanisms? So things like the ice baths and breathing and, all of that good stuff. So yeah, he's looking good. He's trying to avoid the dad bod, I think, at this point in time.
So just for the listeners, you don't have to give me exact, but can you give me decade ages here so that we know, so people understand that you look like you're in your 20s, but I know you're not in your 20s. So that 20-year-olds, because it's different, right? So what are the decades we got going here?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 36, or I'll be 36. I'll be 36 this year. I had to wait. How old am I? I don't feel 36, but I'll be 36 this year. So I had Dexter when I was 35. No, I had Dexter when I was 34. So yeah, I was definitely on the older end for having children, and we're planning to have one more, not anytime soon, but at some point in the future. So there is some incentive to keep the body and hormones and things operating in a way that fosters our ability to do that. And Chris did he just turn 47, or is he still 40? Yeah, I think he turns 48 this year. So he just turned
So
47.
30s and 40s, and I'm in my late 40s too. The things change in your late 30s. I think you get really smart actually, because you've seen 2 cycles of the world,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's a market or life or whatever that is. In your 40s, I really did feel smarter. In my 40s, I got to say that I actually think your body sort of settles in, and you can be in the best shape of your life. You're faster and probably more agile in your 20s, but as it relates to, just your body settling in and being what it's being before maybe it starts to disintegrate a little bit. But I've seen plenty of 60. I had a guy pass me on a hill, 60, like 5 or 7 years old, this big hill out here. And I was like, man, that's good news.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about some holistic health. I'm excited for both of you, and you both look happy and you walk and do all this stuff. Let's talk about this. I'm interested in you clearly, I know, have done a ton of research and you have a certification. And what is this? So ice bath isn't new, right? I mean, I remember doing icing your knees and your ankles and all this stuff. And I don't want to say, Whitney, that I feel like it's become a trend, but maybe it's revived itself. I don't know. What is the science, and what prompted you guys to do it? And is it working?
Sure. So I should qualify all of this that like a certification is just a certification. Someone deemed that I had read enough material to actually have, a stamp next to my name that says you're certified in something.
Well, yeah. So we'll just say, I was also thinking in the shower today, I was like, this is going to be the greatest episode in the world, and give all the health advice. And I got a lawyer right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So
There's my
you should
disclaimer.
consult whatever Whitney and I talk about. You should consult your own physician or coach or physician, I guess, on anything we say. So there it is.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a great starting place for, kind of delving into recovery and ice bathing and, what benefits there are from that. I think that we all have on any given day such a customized version of what is happening inside our bodies. And it is so easy to look at, what someone else is doing or read a book about, what someone's advice is about holistic health and wellness and think, oh, well, if it worked for them, it's absolutely going to work for me. It doesn't. It is our bodies are so unique and our minds are so unique, and our tolerances for things are so unique. And as I said at the beginning, it's a bit of a moving target, because as our bodies are changing, as our environment is changing, as our hormones are changing, all of those inputs are different and may alter, what it is that you need to be doing for your body in any given moment or space. The ice bathing actually sort of started. So Chris was an athlete. He played football, and then moved on to CrossFit, and has always just been a really active person. So a lot of professional athletes and high intensity trainers. I know marathoners. I'm sure Brandon, for you, even sometimes after a long bike ride. Ice baths have been around for a long time as a means of recovery for muscles, joints, swelling, inflammation, all of those good things. I think more recently, I'm sure this has been common knowledge among the folks who have been, big proponents of it, but I think more recently it has become more publicized and available for public consumption that ice bathing on a cellular level really helps regenerate and create new cells and heal damaged cells, and kind of push everything to those center organs to make sure that you're keeping yourself alive, which really allows your body to focus less on all of the other processes that are going on at any given moment, and really does allow then that true recovery on more than just a muscular or skeletal level, but actually on a cellular level. And so we kind of started leaning into, ice bathing. I say we. I'm a much infrequent user of the ice baths than Chris is, primarily because mindset-wise, I'm a little bit different in that I hate the cold. Chris likes extremes. He lives for that stuff. It takes a lot for me to talk myself into wanting to get that cold. But it goes along nicely with breath work as well. And kind of figuring out a way in your mind to get to a meditative place so that you're feeling less of the cold and able to stay in there longer to get the true benefits on a cellular level. And a lot of that is done, through breath work, and I think can be accomplished similar goals if you're using breath work in the right way. So maybe that's a good segue into more breathing and more breath work focused. But
Well, I'm not ready to move on to that yet, because this whole thing, does the science does, so here's what I wonder, Whitney. A lot of people do the ice bath, and I think maybe all that's true, right? I mean, it sure does feel better. Whether that's because I'm numb afterwards, I have no idea. And it always has for me in that way. But here's what I wonder. I was reading, and I'm a fan. I have no like stock interest or anything other than I, like you, have tested way too many things, experimented with my body, so to speak, to sort of figure out what works. And I text you it on Instagram. I think it's Plant Paradox by this guy, Dr. Gundy. And I don't know if he's real. I don't know if he's a wacko. I don't know if he's a science, like the science is real. He sure does look young for a guy who's whatever, 60 or 70 years old. But here's what I do know. I did experiment on that. Mm-hmm. And I actually reduced my bike riding. Mm-hmm. And all I did, because at least in my life, when I find, like, when you try to do 5 things, right? You're trying to build a business, you're trying to turn muscle, reduce your body fat, you're trying to ride 100 miles or 200 miles a week, and then daily life. Like, I don't know about any, and weight lift. It's like, for me, it's really freaking hard. So I said, I'm just going to try this thing that he says. And his whole idea is that there's lectins in foods, and these lectins cause all sorts of problems, including inflammation and things like that. And where I'm going with it is that I did follow it, and my inflammation was definitely down. I was sharper. I weighed less than I did in high school. I got down to 143. I was, very low body fat, and I was able to stay that way, which was the interesting part. I didn't go up or down. I kept going. So here's going back to this ice bath thing. If there's anything to this lectin theory, which at least for me, it seems there is, which means, no corn, no soy, no, tomatoes, things like that. It's not this like all vegetables are good for you. It's not that they're bad for you, but I wonder if you could just control this by doing your diet.
So I think there's 2 really important things here. One, there's an amazing new book out by a gentleman named Sean Stevenson. It's called Eat Smarter. Sean was I talk about him like I know him. I don't know this guy. I think very highly of him. He's got a podcast called The Model Health Show.
But you feel like you know these people because,
I know, right?
Because you read them, you see them, you listen to them, right? Like, yeah. So.
Absolutely. So Sean wrote a book several years ago called Sleep Smarter, which I think is a fabulous book. I recommend it to anyone who is not a big proponent of making sure they're getting enough sleep every night. He wrote this new book called Eat Smarter. He's been a clinician in the nutrition space for 10 plus years. He himself was able to heal himself through, a variety of different approaches to nutrition. And he talks a lot in this new book about the biggest pandemic that we are not addressing in today's culture is brain inflammation, and how much that really impacts gut, how much it impacts, of course, brain function, memory, Alzheimer's, dementia, things later in life. But really how much that actually impacts the body too, right? And how that inflammation transcends past that blood-brain barrier and impacts everything. And so I think when we're talking about inflammation, it's really important to acknowledge that inflammation starts in the gut, starts in the brain, communicates between the two, is always going back and forth between the two. And so anything you can do to reduce inflammation can be a good thing. It is a sign that your body is healing. It is, helpful in many, many ways, but unnecessary inflammation, food-caused inflammation, Any inflammation that is long-standing is not something that you want to plague your body with. And I think something that we as just a human culture need to be more focused on in terms of healing, our minds and our bodies. So, off my soapbox about that for now. How I think that plays into what you're talking about and the ice bathing is that we all have different ways that our body is impacted by inflammation, right? Some people externally look the same, whether or not they're inflamed, but internally their organs may be quite literally shutting down, right? And this is the bad kind of inflammation, right? This is the inflammation that is long-standing, that we can't get rid of, that is not doing our body good. It's doing our body harm. There is good inflammation too, so I'm not talking about that. There are other people when they get inflamed, myself as a great example, where when my body's inflamed, I see it on the scale pretty immediately. Meaning if I've eaten something that my body has not agreed with or that I'm sensitive to, it is something that I can identify on the scale. And so that's something that I use as a metric for, I'm not obsessed with what that number is, but it is a metric of what is happening inside my body, right? Did I drink enough water yesterday? Did I get enough sleep? Did I eat properly? Like, what is happening in terms of inflammation in my body? And when it gets really bad, not only do I see it on the scales, but my fingers tend to get really swollen. It's kind of the first place that I notice it, right? So I think that there are a variety of ways that we can identify inflammation is happening in our bodies and look to try to reduce that. The Dr. Gundry and the plant paradox, yes, I know lots of people who've had success, utilizing his system. The idea being that lectins is those particular plants have some sort of defense mechanism from being eaten, right? It is how they survive. And so lectins are the plant toxin that they are emitting in order to prevent, their predators from coming and consuming them. I don't believe that everybody has a response to lectins, which is why I don't believe that there is a one-stop, follow the plant paradox and your body will be never inflamed again. I personally don't have a big reaction to lectin-rich foods. It's not something that is a trigger for my body. Now, do I have a reaction to other foods? Certainly. I have a really high reaction to high acidic foods like coffee. So for me, that's not something that I know that if I consume too much coffee or a coffee that is not well processed or is just too acidic, that my body is going to become inflamed. And it sort of has the contrary effect. After a few days, instead of feeling energized by that, it makes me feel more fatigued, which I identify as a sign of inflammation. So I think that we all need to be cognizant of the information that we're gathering and, the people that are certified or experts or telling us information, irrespective of whether or not they have MD or, whatever other certification behind their name. We need to be so much more conscientious about how certain things are making our bodies feel and how that changes over time, and really be honed in on, different steps that we know work for our body in, a given season. So for me, I know walking is a great recovery exercise. It's, why you see us doing it so much on my Instagram. For Chris, if it's ice bathing, right? For him, he knows that the lowering of his heart rate, which actually does happen. It's kind of crazy. He gets into that ice bath and he times it, I forget what level he goes to, but he likes to get his heart rate down to a certain level because that identifies for him that internally the blood is going to his heart, slowing down all of the other, parasympathetic symptoms that are, or systems that are, ongoing in his body. And so for him, it's a heart rate monitoring. And once he gets to a certain heart rate, he likes to keep it there for however many minutes. And that to him is his recovery, right? That is what's lowering his levels of inflammation. I don't think that ice bathing is the only way you can do that. I think you can also do that through diet. I think you can also do that through, low impact, high or low heart rate activities like walking. I think you can do that through having a great conversation with a friend even, right? Like there's so many different ways that we can look at inflammation and talk about lowering it that I don't think it's a one size fits all, and that we as humans need to do a better job of educating ourselves on what works for our bodies and leaning into, those processes. Are you still eating according to lectin free or reduced lectin type dietary restrictions?
So I have tried. I thought that I was invincible. I always think that, but I looked at the scale. I use a Fitbit only because everything that I do, I try to make easy. Because like recording your food and recording your sleep and then writing your weight and putting a spreadsheet, I just found over all these years, whatever I've been doing this since I was in high school, maybe even elementary school. I just, it makes it hard. So I went back and I looked at this. I'm not answering your question, I know, directly. The answer is no in general, but I did look at the scale and I was like, what the hell happened? I work from home. I've been lucky for the most part of my entire career to work from home. It's not new. Yvette and I generally always work from home. Um, you know, I'm not, when I like the, I like the attention of being in groups, but it wears me out because I'm an introvert. So it in general, not so, it's something that I like because I get reward from it but I don't get energy from it. So I don't always seek that out. So I thought that, I was like, oh, I'm fine. My dentist said, you're like, Brandon, you've been built for this your whole life. Like nothing's changed. But I looked and, we did go off of it. And I just think it happened. So I am back on it currently.
Okay.
But it's been, my wife and I have an interesting relationship with food with both of us. Yeah, we're not heavy, but we both definitely gained some weight. Even you can't out exercise a bad diet.
Nope.
We have this thing like, I don't know what it is. We both, what do we say? Soothe each other. Like yesterday, I am not so strict that I won't eat sourdough bread because this place makes great tri-tip. I was like, I'm not going to give that up right away because also I don't believe this, like just go off the cliff. Anything that you do extreme, although I am extreme, it doesn't work for me. Like you will break. Right. So, but then yesterday, get to my point, I see the cookie. I was like, why'd you buy the cookie? And she's like, oh, I felt so bad for you when we went by the New Leaf thing and you really wanted that cookie. And it's a kind thing, right? But it's this thing that is a habit between us and we recognize it. But I am going back on it, or I'm moving towards it. I have lost some body fat. We are getting the DEX scan, which is pretty much, they say, the de facto thing. I'm going to get my VO2 done again. And I am having so during the pandemic, I must have just started drinking shit ton of caffeine. And I liked caffeine, right? But I was listening to a podcast that just reminded me, it's not that I don't know this. And I was like, yeah, it really does put you in fight or flight, but I've liked it because it just dials me in so intense, but I'm worn out. So I am on 2 cups a day down from, I'd be embarrassed to admit it's tea. So it's not coffee, but I think Whitney, I was at 5 cups. And this week has been effing hard. Like I saw myself shaking the other day and I was like, what the hell is going on? So next week is 1 cup. We'll see, but that was a long answer to your, for me, that diet works like nothing it's not a diet. First of all, I don't even like that word. You can comment on that, but it works like for me, like nothing I've ever seen. And I worry, when you sent me that text about Chris and cancer, which we can talk about in a minute, but I was like, you know what? I could be late 40s is when I've had friends die from all sorts of things. So maybe going on this diet's like a defense that keeps it away that I didn't even know I have it. So I'm motivated. I'm going to do it. I think, so I have a question for you. I wanted to answer your question in that long-winded way. Not really, but I did want to answer your question before I ask, what's the temperature of the water that Chris is getting into?
I believe it's sitting right now at 52 degrees. It's chilly.
Yeah. So the interesting part is I was listening to you. I started surfing during the pandemic, which like every good surfer is pissed at people like me. And I totally get it. But I was like, I live in Northern California. Mavericks wave, which is like one of the most 3 biggest big waves. Not that I'm going to surf that. But there's great surfing. I mean, Santa Cruz is right down the coast and it's got, so I was like, oh, I'll start surfing. And I got to tell you, the water here is generally always 56 to 58.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel incredible. Even, in the wetsuit, you're warmer, but it really, there's something to that.
Have you ever monitored your heart rate while you're in the water, even in the wetsuit?
Well, to be quite honest with you, most of the time I've been scared as shit. We have great white sharks here. I took surfing lessons and So, and I'm not saying I'm something special, but at my age, I look fit. I mean, you take your shirt off, you can tell. I mean, if some guy has a six pack,
Right.
probably fit. So he's a famous surfer, guy down in Santa Cruz. I was like, hey, I'm going to take these lessons. 3 lessons in, he's like, oh, you could he's like, you'll paddle for any wave. You're more in shape than 90% of these people out. You're more in shape than some of the, semi-pro surfers out here. I was like, don't mistake what I look like for my surfing fitness. Right. I mean, it can be deceiving. I understand maybe I'm strong, but I got to tell you, like, I'm so sore from paddling.
Yeah.
So he takes me out to this freaking one day. I get in and he doesn't go to the normal place, which we've been surfing at this place called Jackson. We go to this other spot of special swell, all this crap. And Whitney, I'm walking down this cliff and I'm looking, I'm like, that is freaking big out there. I was like, hey man, not really feeling like this is the right thing. He's like, you're ready. I was like, dude, you have not even I'm not even good at some of these skills. Like, I'm riding a longboard, so I can't go under a wave really, really efficiently. I certainly don't have my swimming. I'm an okay swimmer, but I don't have my swimming skills. Like, it wasn't like I've been paddling every day. I've been riding my bike. And then I come see you. I surf for 2 hours and I go home. I mean, so then, yeah, I got held under for like 3 waves. It must have been look, I don't know. It was big. So I rode a few waves, scared to death. So back to your question, my heart rate has not been going down. My heart rate has been generally high. That day, I'm paddling into shore, and because I was like, I had enough at this. I mean, and it was if you were a good surfer, it was an epic day for sure. So I probably blew that, and most guys would be like, what a jerk. But I went in, I was like, I got to rest, man. I've been held down. This lady was on a paddleboard, Whitney, and when someone looks at you and you connect your eyes, you've never met them before, but that they know that you might be in trouble. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, that's the look she gave me. Cause I was like, I got held in this set and I had to keep going down. That's the first time I've really, I watched it, see all these pros do it. They make it look easy.
Yep.
And so anyway, I go in, Whitney, and I'm paddling, and this cute little seal like pops up right next to me. Like, and he's just swimming with me. And here on the Northern California, that's not uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 weeks earlier, a guy got bit by a great white shark about 2 miles down south and died. And I'm a fisherman. So where did these sharks, especially juveniles, go? They go right along the edge where these things go and eat. And what do I look like? A freaking seal. So my heart rate has never gone down probably under 150, and I'm generally scared. And then he told me, he's like, look, if you're going to be scared of sharks, you might as well go back to riding your bike. And I thought about that. And I was like, I'm going to think about that more. So in general, I've been in safe spots, but it's still like all these things are in my head. So that was a really long answer.
Maybe not the benefits of ice bathing if your heart rate is, yes.
I'm thinking, yeah, like I'm thinking I got to do this stupid thing where I got to get this freezer, which you bet probably ain't going to let me have. Or I guess you can, I mean, do you think the shower works the same way?
I think the shower works the same way if you can get cold enough water out of your faucet. We do not have that benefit in the summers in Arizona, which was sort of the catalyst behind, us getting this freezer at this point in time. I will say too, that there is some evidence that you can get a similar benefit of, the blood kind of going to your main organs and out of your extremities through breath work. And being able to train your body to hold oxygen in, not breathing as often, holding your breath is kind of what that looks like. And being able to get similar benefits that way as well. So I think there are other ways that you can get your body to that recovery place without, the deep freeze that your wife won't let you have. But I think that, fast, efficient way is definitely, putting your relatively naked body into cold ice water. The
Yeah, I
hard
don't want to be, and my wife's a wonderful woman, and her feedback of me not having that is completely justified, considering the 50 bikes and surfboards and a bunch of
Absolutely.
fishing equipment. I just
That
want to
wasn't
say
meant
that
as a
because
dig to her.
I don't like that whole thing, Whitney, where couples are always like, oh, my wife, we don't have that relationship. It's not like that. I don't want to paint that picture, but here I have another question. I'm interested in your thoughts on breath work because I read a book by Patrick McCowan. I actually had him on the podcast, and that has made a huge change. I didn't think about the organ thing, but it has made my fitness better. What do you think about saunas?
About songs?
Saunas.
Oh, saunas. Well, that is next on Chris's wish list for, something to add to our garage recovery. So I think there's definite benefit to saunas. And I think it depends what kind of saunas we're talking about. If we're talking
Dry
about
heat. Dry heat. I'm looking at I got it up here because I've been saving my money. And it's called the Happy, what is it called? I've been looking at this. A bunch of big wave surfers here is why I found out about it. Live in my neighborhood. It's called the, what is this? It's called, it's a round crate type thing. Almost Heaven saunas. I don't,
Almost Heaven, I'll have to check it out. Is it infrared or is it
no,
just a
I
dry
don't want
sauna?
to do infrared. I want to do dry. I enjoy dry heat
Mhm.
saunas.
Yeah.
And then you can throw some water on them. And these are apparently designed to do that. Some of them aren't. So if you're listening out there and you go to try sauna, just don't throw water unless it says that. So, I really do feel good, but I'm wondering you do all this research. Like, does it work?
So, admittedly, saunas are not my forte. That is something we're just getting into the space of. I will say that there is a ton of research out there about the benefits of specifically hot and cold together. So, I think that it's a good mix if you're getting in the water without sharks and able to lower your heart rate. Jumping from there into heat, just even that systemic change is great for your body in terms of recovery. Um, and yeah, anything that makes you feel good is going to, lower your cortisol levels. So on a hormonal level, I think there's immense benefits to, sauna as ways for recovery and health and happiness as well. So I can't speak much more to it because admittedly, that has not been a focal point of my research lately, but I did want to come back to something that you mentioned about the sourdough and the cookies. I wrote it down so that I didn't forget because it has been so interesting having a baby and getting to see what is nurture versus nature. And I think that when we talk about diet culture, a word which I also try to stay away from, primarily because I think we have linked the word diet to something extremely negative that is not actually what it was intended to be. But when we talk about food as a mechanism of soothing and a mechanism of just internal peace and happiness, and the fact that we start off as humans as being unable to feed ourselves alone, like it has to be at least two-person activity. I think that there's a really interesting concept that we tend to miss as adults because of how we've been trained and conditioned and what media has told us about diet. But I think we've been trained to believe that craving certain things or that eating the bread or having the cookie or doing whatever else is a bad thing and something that we should be all or nothing, kind of in on in terms of mindset. And having Dexter and really kind of watching what he does and how much peace and happiness it brings him just to have, it's not even a bottle now, it's meal times even, right? Like it's such a level of satisfaction and just ability to kind of continue on. I think that it's a really great reminder for us that it's okay to have those cravings and it's okay to use food to soothe, because it is an emotional, right out of the womb, it is an emotional connection and an emotional process of my body needs this and my emotions are tied to the connection of satisfying that physical need. I've taken that a step too far every once in a while. And do you guys have crumble cookies up there? It's a like chain of, oh man, Sugar is my downfall. I have a hard time with the sweet stuff, meaning once I start, I have a hard time stopping. And there's this stupid cookie place. I say stupid angrily because I can't stop eating them now, but this delicious cookie place called Crumble Cookies, that, you know, I find myself every so often like, oh, they deliver, which is also another problem during a pandemic because they literally arrive just directly to my doorstep 20 minutes after I order it. Um, but, you know, I've kind of had to reach this balance of, you know, it's okay for me to have that craving, and whether or not I am honoring that and having it at every time, you know, it clicks in my brain is a different story. But it's okay to have that craving and to use food to some level to soothe that emotional, you know, hole that I'm needing to fill with whatever it is that I'm craving. So I hope you ate that cookie. I hope you had the sourdough bread with your tri-tip or whatever it was that you had at the barbecue place, because I do think that on like a very human level, that is a natural thing to want to do.
So yeah, I'm going to do two things. One is I absolutely, Yvette, whether it's conscious, we're aware of it more so after, I guess we've been married, we've been together for like 22 years. So you start to figure out things with one another. The real relationship begins right after 2 decades. But I absolutely, when she's in a bad mood and she says she's hungry, will absolutely say, let's go out and eat. Because as soon as I do that, I know she's happy and she loves food, right? As we all do. But here's what I want to say about this craving thing that you've mentioned. Is it really okay to have that craving? Because here it's like boiling the frog. You have the one, at least for me, right? You have the one cookie, then the next day, like if they delivered here in Half Moon Bay, that'd be a serious problem for me. But you have that cookie, and then, you know, one night you're like, okay, well, we're going to do it one night a week, and one night a week turns into 2 weeks. And before you know it, you're having cookies 4 nights a week. And here in my experience and reading things, now you're addicted to the sugar, and now your gut is running your brain. So now you actually don't have the choice. So what do you think about keeping that balance? Like, how do you make sure you don't cross over? Because you know that the gut's almost probably controlling us more than our brain. At least from the research that I've read lately. What do you think about that?
I think that I think it starts before you even satisfy the craving, right? With the very preliminary question of why am I having this craving? Is it because I had cookies the last 4 nights? And so the sugar drug that is happening in my brain is actually creating like a drug like fiending for, you know, this particular substance. That is a very real situation and something that I think we discount a lot as a society because sugar has become so ingrained in all of the processed foods that we consume. So I think that's one. I think when you're evaluating why that craving is happening, that oftentimes it's some other need that is not being filled. Is that sleep? Is it water? Is it emotional connection? Is it stress? Like what is actually the root of that craving? Because more times than not, it's not actually the sugar that's causing you to crave more sugar. More times than not, it's one of those other things that are causing maybe the initial, like let's call it, you know, the first taste of that. I think that there are very intentional ways that you can also consume those things. And what I mean by that is if you're having a craving for sugar, I think it's a great idea to evaluate why you're having that craving. Okay, we've been through step 1. Step 2, I think surrounding yourself with people while you're eating and satisfying that craving actually resolves a little bit of the like overdoing it potential. And I say that in a way of, if I'm going to sit down with a box of cookies and I'm going to do that in front of Chris versus by myself in my office, I'm going to eat a whole lot more by myself in the office than I would with Chris, which is sort of that catch-22 in that cycle of now I've consumed more sugar, now I'm craving more sugar, as opposed to I had one cookie and it feels a little bit more manageable for me to avoid the secondary cookie. And I feel satisfied by the one cookie. It isn't a matter of I need the whole box of cookies, but you know, I've kicked the craving with this one cookie that I've had. I also think that there's a lot of things you can do if you're consuming something like sugar to kind of counteract the effects of that. And what I mean by that is, before I'm satisfying a craving for something sugar-based or something that, might relate to more cravings, is I always try to have like 8 to 16 ounces of water. The reason being that kind of satisfying that thirst first. Am I actually hungry, or is this like a hydration issue? I think is a big factor. And there's things that you can do then after you're consuming things like sugar. Like, I don't know, do you take activated charcoal at all as part of some of your protocols?
I I I do not. You'll have to tell me what that's about.
Activated charcoal is an amazing substance to take if you've had anything that I would consider you needed to like detox for your system. I'm not a big like cleanse person or person who thinks that you should be like, doing like juice fast or anything like that. But I think that if you're having a moment where you're satisfying cravings and where you're leaning into I'm consuming things that maybe my body is not accustomed to, or something I know that my body is going to have an inflammatory response to. If you have activated charcoal after that meal, what that actually does is attach to those substances in your digestive system and helps your body clear that as kind of one lump sum, as opposed to it being, remnant in your gut and kind of lasting a little bit longer in your body than what would happen if you took the activated.
Is this, I gotta ask, just being I don't know what the word is when you either sucker, um, uh, consumer, romanticizing the belief that this supplement's going to make me grow, reduce my belly fat. So is there real science around the charcoal from what you found?
There is. I can't speak to it directly. I don't have like a link to tell you like what the research is. There is real science behind that. It's not hokey. And I will say that you are going to need to experiment a little bit in your own body. For myself, I know that there's a certain level of charcoal that I can take. We get them in just capsules. It's just activated charcoal, nothing else in there. And I can't take more than one, because if I take more than one, it actually has the adverse effect. It totally backs me up. So I will say that there is some level of like personal experimentation that you need to undergo in order to understand how that interacts in your body. But I do think that, and there's a variety of other supplements that you could take that probably are going to have, a similar or somewhat substantial effect as well. I have found and like charcoal because it has nothing else in it. It is quite literally just charcoal, and I don't have any other side effects from it. It doesn't impact my body in other, negative ways. So I do think that there are ways, that you can operate with satisfying those cravings, being intentional about it, operating in a mindset of why am I having this? I'm having just this one. I'm doing with people to make sure I'm having just this one. And then after the fact, how is that impacting my body, and how can I ensure that it's exiting my body in a way that I'm not going to be craving cookies for the next, 10 days.
So here's another question for you, because I wouldn't say I get criticized. I'd say I get feedback from people, which is everything you've said. I think, I mean, it works. You and I both know it works. But here's the reality. And you have Dexter now, and it probably compound itself when you have two kids. But so here's what people say to me. And this is about a business or health or whatever. Like, oh, of course, Brandon, because you don't have kids and you control your schedule for the most part, and you can be intentional, right? So how does I don't want to say typical American family, but typical American family, especially during a pandemic, it's stressful outside of a pandemic. You got to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You got to get the kid breakfast. I'm talking to it like it's an inanimate object. I remember my mom trying to get my brother and I just out the door to get into the car to drive to school. I mean, it was this mad rush every day, right? So it's very easy in that mad rush, or at dinner. You got to get these kids dinner. You got to get them showered. You got to, I don't know what you got to do. You got to get their homework done. What is your thought hack, whatever it is, for someone to be able to handle this in that craziness of a household that is probably truly going on?
Twofold. One, start small, and I'll get into that in a minute. Two, get help. And I don't mean help with your kids, although that is lovely and amazing if you can afford that or have the, resources in your community or family to do that, like amazing. What I mean by, and I'll start with the latter first, what I mean by get help is that I think that there is a requisite baseline understanding of how our bodies are operating. And if you are starting this process of, whether it's trying to get healthy, trying to, make healthier decisions for your kids, trying as a family to be more energized and, disease free, whether it's biohacking, whether it's actual, like, I want my brain to function at a different level, like whatever your goal is with all of this, you have to have some baseline understanding of what is happening inside your body before you even start making small hacks to that, right? And so I know that that sounds kind of like a cop out because that can be a really big job, but there are people who specialize and companies who specialize in helping you gain a better understanding of what's happening on a baseline level within your body. So there's a lot of companies out there where you can get your food allergies tested. And some of them are fairly cost efficient nowadays too. Like I think for $100 Everlywell, we used them several years ago. It was much more expensive then, but I think they have like a baseline food allergy test for $100. I think that that is an amazing place to start. You spit in like a tube, you mail it in, like you don't have to go anywhere. It's all done, very easy online. And they quite literally tell you like what your body is going to have responses to. Now that's a moving target because if you're eating, like when we took it, Chris was eating like a ridiculous amount of eggs every day. And so eggs turned up as like a highly sensitive food group for him because his body was having an inflammatory response to that because he was consuming so much of it. On a regular basis, that's not an issue for him, but something to keep in mind. But I think getting a baseline of what am I consuming that could potentially be creating an issue in my body, or baseline, what are the things that maybe I should be looking to avoid, are, just having that knowledge is important. So there's areas that you can do that for not very much money and not very much time and convenient, like right to your doorstep on a food basis. I think we also need to take a baseline evaluation of our environment. Meaning, have you ever had your water tested? Are you drinking tap water? Are you drinking filtered water? What does that look like? Because I also think that our environment plays a really big role in what is happening on a baseline level with our bodies and our general health and wellness. And there are some cost efficient ways that you can get access to that, right? Like I think here in Scottsdale, I can log on and see like what the, most toxins are in our drinking water. And, if I'm absorbing that through my skin when I'm showering, like what does that look like in terms of just like environmental stuff? If you live in a house or an area where there's a lot of moisture, do you have mold in your house? It might be worth hiring someone to come out and then take a quick air evaluation to determine if you're inhaling that, right? So it's work, but I think that there are ways to acquire kind of that baseline, of what our environment and our bodies are doing. And I think that you kind of need to understand that you're not going to be able to acquire all of that information yourself. You need to get help for that. I will also say, and this is a little bit tangential before I get back to how I think you can start small. I did recently go see a naturopath here in the Phoenix area, just to kind of get a baseline of what my hormones are doing postpartum too, right? I'm a bit older. Having a kid at any age is a traumatic experience for your body. And I mean that in the best of ways, but it is, right? Like I had a C-section as well. So I had, abdomen cut wide open, organs moved around. Like there was a lot that goes on in that particular instance. And then you've got several months of limited sleep and, your hormones are doing crazy, crazy things. So I was feeling not bad, but just not my best, and thought, it's probably good for me to just go and have a panel of blood work done to figure out like where my hormones are. I actually go next week to get my follow-up, but this particular doctor thinks that my testosterone is a little bit off because of my age and because of, having a baby at this age. So I didn't know that by myself. I could have done all the online research about all the different hormonal things that could have happened, postpartum. And maybe this isn't a postpartum issue at all. Maybe this is just an age issue that has been initiated by, a postpartum body situation. So I think it's so imperative that we stop trying to solve all of our problems for ourselves and really lean on, scientists and medical practitioners and companies who are doing testing of environments and food allergies and all those good things for us to kind of get a better understanding of what is happening and how we can start making these small tweaks. Now, onto my next soapbox of how to start small. I think the two greatest gifts that you can give to yourself immediately and on an ongoing basis are sleep and water. And I think it's the two most underutilized tricks that we as humans take advantage of. I have a really good friend, super high performer, big job, really, really intelligent human, has 4 children, is doing all the things on the home front and the work front. And he said to me yesterday, he's like, I'm just exhausted. I'm exhausted. And, I could hire a coach, but I know what to do. Like, it isn't a matter of, I don't know what to do. I know what to do in this perspective. I just don't have like the accountability to actually do it. And I think that when we are biting off this idea of, I need to do a whole overhaul of my entire life, my entire health and wellness. My kids can't eat this anymore. We're all going to get good sleep. We're all going to drink 50 liters of water a day. We're all going to go for a walk every day. That's a lot to be managing in like one big swoop. So start small. What is one thing that you can focus on for, the next 7 days that you can put a calendar reminder in your calendar, an alarm in your phone, something to kind of trigger for yourself? Okay, yes, like this is the one thing I'm focusing on this week, and that's all I have to do. And I think the 2 best places you can start are sleep and water. So, maybe this week I'm going to go to bed half an hour earlier. That's my only goal for this week. I'm going to go to bed for half an hour earlier. I bet for most people, if they did that 7 days a week and actually like honored that and were committed to half an hour earlier, that's a pretty life-changing amount of sleep over the course of 7 days. Or I'm going to drink before every meal 8 to 16 ounces of water as part of just before any food hits my lips. That's what I'm going to do for the next 7 days. Anytime before I eat, I'm going to have a sip of water or, a few ounces of water. That in and of itself will probably make you feel more energized and like ready to tackle whatever is, approaching in like multitudes of amounts. So I think that starting small and really hitting kind of those baseline efforts is the other great hack that we just so underutilize. That was very long-winded. I'm sure you have a million questions about all of that, but get help and start small.
What have you been talking to Yvette? She turns me off from my questions at 11. That's why we started this at 8:30 today. I'm halfway joking, but not, but not really. I seem to ask a lot of questions. So I agree with everything in it as you were talking. I got a bunch of notes here. So one is, I agree, your environment could be causing things that you believe is your fault. That's not. We actually just had our water tested. The guy said, thank God we had a water leak last weekend, like water all over the backyard, because the people who had owned our house before, we have a well here in Half Moon Bay, have this, I don't know what to call it, when it looks like a water filtration place that's making nuclear water good. I mean, it's like 50 things, and we've never understood it, quite candidly. I was like, well, maybe it's working. And then we just put reverse osmosis in the kitchen, and we're like, okay, well, whatever comes out there, at least we're safe. And they tested it, and he's like, you have the most incredible water coming out of your well that we've seen. He's like, I'd love to sell you a filtration system. So which sort of changed us, because we actually felt like our water wasn't drinkable out of the tap, and then we're showering in it. So like just that thought for the last 8 years has gone. So I think that's a good point. I think that the one thing that, when you're talking about your high performer friend, is at some point in your life, you do know what you should do on basics. And it was something that I was, before we got on, I wanted to talk about, because I think there's all these marketing offers from marketers, but at the base of it, it goes back to what you said: get some better sleep and drink some water and just see what happens there, right? The mold and everything for sure, because you can't control that. So get that tested, but just the baseline. But even, I think you touched on something that is really important. And actually, you're going to have to tell me to shut up, because I tend to rant about this, which is, this whole online course stuff. And I sell an online course. I'm not going to sell the course anymore. And the reason I'm not going to sell the course anymore is because I think courses are offers and not success pathways. How many courses have anybody out there listening to this podcast, or you, Whitney, me included, and you don't do the whole course, but you do know that the secrets are in that quote unquote secrets, right? Success secrets, yeah, is in there, but you don't do the course. Now, why don't you do the course, right? But why doesn't your high performing friend get more sleep and drink water when he knows, I know, you know, and it's accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and the other thing that I'll say is, I have a tendency to want to, I enjoy helping people. A lot of people help me get to where I am that didn't need to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get satisfaction from that. Like, I like people having success. I mean, I get to brag about it. I get to see them, their life changes. I mean, you know, you'll change a generations by changing someone. So in general, I'd help anybody for free if I could, which I can, and I have. But anybody that I help for free, I haven't had great success stories. I've had friends that I've sort of given some advice to here or there, but not truly like invested. The people that I've invested the time for free, I just haven't seen. I think it's because they're not accountable. So, you know, people listening may be like, oh, well, Brandon, you're in business. It's self, you know, you're self-dealing or whatever the word is. But I think you have to pay. You have to pay for something, because if I call you every Friday and say, Whitney, um, how's the sleep going? Or, you know, now you're accountable. I'm accountable to this stupid deck scan that's happening on the 22nd. You all right there? I don't want you to choke. Whitney's on camera choking. I don't want her to die on me on the podcast. You know, that would be, you do a documentary and people die, you seem to have a bestseller, but I don't want anybody dying on the podcast. Chris will blame me, probably show up to my house, kill me.
Apologies about that. No, I just had sucked something back there.
I thought you just having a visceral reaction to my comments, but no. So I think accountability, and I think that can come in a lot of different ways. I found it with Yvette. She got the Peloton. I bought it for her birthday like 4 years ago, mainly because she really was going to the gym to ride the bike, and the bike really wasn't good, and she liked spin classes. And you would think that the Peloton, like, that was the magic answer, right? You got the class, you go, but it wasn't. She paid for an online group that does these challenges every 8 or 12 weeks. And she's accountable. She has to post that thing in there. I use Strava, which isn't necessarily accountable, but when your friends follow you, you're sort of accountable, because when you log on and you see that, you know, I see these people, I'm like, oh my God, she rode 60 miles today. I haven't done shit. I got to go put in 38 miles. Like, there's this thing, and I pay for that premium, the premium version of that. But, and I don't care how broke you are, even paying $29 a month or something, it holds you accountable. And going back to the whole course thing, the reason that the online courses aren't successful is because they're mainly, and I say this lovingly because I know a lot of these people, sold by marketers. And what they don't have is accountability built in, not as an upsell, which one-on-one coaching will always be an upsell. You did holistic coaching, like, there's huge value. When I've had one-on-one coaching, I've probably had the most results, I could say. But I think there's this level of accountability. So even for the best performers, and isn't it ironic that even Olympic athletes, professional athletes, even the best ones, have personal coaches? And it's not that, like, Steph Curry doesn't know what to do for the Golden State Warriors. It's not that he doesn't know how to eat. It's not that he doesn't know how to train. It's not that he doesn't know how to do the cold bath, but he doesn't. If he didn't have someone there to focus on him to make sure that he did it, it probably wouldn't happen. So,
and I think that sort of goes back to ways that we can structure accountability for ourselves based on how that's also such a unique perspective of how accountability works for us, right? For some people, and this was a big learning experience for me in one-on-one coaching, for some people, daily check-ins is accountability, right? That for some people is enough for them to feel like I can be successful in this. Someone's checking in on me. I'm accountable to that person because they're spending the time to actually engage with me on this. For other people, accountability is sometimes incentives. meaning, what do I get at the end of this? Like the one-on-one accountability is not actually what drives me, but what drives me is like, I know if I do this for 7 days, that I get X at the end of this. For Steph Curry, his accountability is the incentive of performance, right? Like I get paid to perform here. And without all of these things, that incentive is not there. So I think at the heart of it, it's also identifying within yourself, what does that accountability look like? And at what points in time in your life have you been very successful in maintaining habits or, being accountable to yourself for things? And if it is structuring, at the end of this week, if I do this for 7 days, I'm going to allow myself to, do X, or I'm going to treat myself to whatever that is. And it doesn't need to be a monetary thing. Maybe it's, hey husband, you have to watch the kids for half an hour and I'm going to go sit in the backyard in my bathing suit, undisturbed by whoever, right? Like whatever that incentive is, you have to identify what that is. And kind of structure that accountability in a way so that it actually works for that purpose. With this friend, we agreed that we were going to check in with each other. It's not paid accountability, but it's accountability in the time that we're both spending to make sure the other person is doing what they said they were going to do, right?
I think there is, for sure, a good message in there. I think also on the coaching or whoever you have, you need to pick someone that's willing to hold you to the fire. Like some coaches will break down, right? Like, oh, I don't want to get fired. I don't, I'm trying to get fired. I mean, and I think you have to have that discipline. I think it's hard with your spouse. I think it works. Yvette and I have certainly done it together. And I know you and Chris at some level do it. I mean, I remember one post that you had and you were doing this work, 12-week program or something. And, Chris wanted to join you, but he didn't, but then he did because, guilt, I don't know what it is, but you're in the living room doing this thing. He can hear it and he knows you're there. So there's definitely a team element that picking a partner that can work for you too. So I think it is just that accountability. I don't want to end before we talk about, because you planted the seed, and I want to hear what your recent research and work is on breath.
Yeah. Breath work, man, this is a topic I could talk about for days and days and days. My kind of venture into breath work probably starts when I was a child, because it was something my mom always worked with me of like, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, right? Like that was always something for her of like a calming technique. Even as early as like, I remember having temper tantrums and her telling me, just breathe, like, let's just breathe it out. Let's just breathe it out. And so kind of thinking about it from that time frame, I think in general that it has always been a technique for me to calm my nervous system with, okay, take 10 breaths and then, do what you need to do, or have the conversation you need to have, or, okay, you're really heated. Let's step away and just breathe for a minute. Like what's happening? Like, let's calm this down, slow it down, right? It kind of goes back to the ice bath circumstance with lowering your heart rate in the ice bath too, right? Like it's the same methodology. You're lowering that response, lowering the heart rate, really calming kind of everything down. A few years ago, I got certified to teach yoga. Well, it started, I was taking hot yoga, as I do, kind of got obsessed with it and thought, I need to be certified in this, because I'm a person who likes to collect all the certifications. And, when I go down the rabbit hole, really go down deep. Sounds like you might do something similar with your time too, Brandon. But so I was taking yoga, loved yoga. There's so much of yoga that is based on pranayama, breath, right? That's what the yogis call breath work. And so during my yoga teacher training, we learned just so many different techniques of breathing, and how you can do that from your belly, how you can do that from your chest, how you can do that from your whole body, different varietals of breathing, whether it was box breathing or, breathing through one nostril, or breathing through, various mouth noises, or, you said singing earlier, or I think I thought I misheard you say songs earlier. You said something else, but I thought that you were actually talking about breath work in that regard, because there are some people who do chant as part of their breath work, practices. So there are so many ways that we breathe. And it's such a mindless activity most of the time. Like I think the stat is like we take like 20,000 breaths a day or something ridiculous. Like it is such a high volume of breaths that we take. And we're so unintentional about it for majority of that time. But if we can actually lower our heart rate, reduce our stress, like create a circumstance of calm and peace and tranquility just by being intentional about that, like what a powerful thing for something that our body does automatically anyways. And so I have like a whole blog post on this. I'll have to send it to you after. But it's been such a transformative practice for me in just being able to control my own emotions and body and kind of what's happening, but learning how many ways there are to do that. And then kind of leaning into that even further. So, all the breath work that I learned about in this yoga teacher training, then compounded, we started doing some work with Wim Hof, who I believe he's a Dutch gentleman. They call him the Iceman. He's the guy who like can hold his breath for, I don't know, some ridiculous sum of time. But his whole concept is really quick, deep breathing. I've got this cold, so I don't want to do it here because you'll be seeing like me coughing a bunch more, trying to like over oxygenate. But his whole perspective is by doing this kind of quick breathing with very deep inhales in and quicker exhales out, you're oxygenating your blood in your body in such high volumes that your body's able to hold on to that. And you should, in theory, be able to hold your breath for longer periods of time in between. And that it's within that breath hold that your body is able to focus more on that cellular regeneration and lowering of heart rate and, the blood going to those main organs, which allows your body to lower all of those things down and actually recover. And so if you kind of look at it from that perspective, it's a really fascinating superpower that we all have that we're just not utilizing. And I think so much of it goes back to, we're unintentional in so much of our lives and what we're doing. And maybe that is because, we've got kids, we've got jobs, we've got businesses, we've got 1,000 things we're trying to do all at the same time. But if we make small things more intentional, with maybe just starting with, I'm just going to take 10 intentional breaths every single day. Maybe that's my thing I do this week, right? That can be really life-changing. And I think people get so caught up in this idea that it needs to be everything all at once instead of, it can be just this really simple, I'm just breathing. I'm just being intentional about breathing. And how transformational that really can be. So, anecdotally from our perspective, we've been doing Wim Hof now I started doing it when I was pregnant, actually. And we've been doing it ever since then. And it is a notable difference. I do it first thing in the morning, like right after I wake up. That's kind of how I like energize before feet hit the floor. And there's a notable difference for me in my energy levels, not just in the morning, but all day long. If I don't take that, it's a 10-minute cycle. It's a free thing on YouTube. Wim Hof actually directs it. It's like a three cycles of his breath with then 3 breath holds. And there's a noticeable difference for me in my energy levels and my brain clarity and all of those things just from having that extra oxygen, in my body first thing in the morning. Do you do any breath work? Do you have a practice that you
I
do?
do. I do. I want to ask you the thing. What is it called? Hof.
Wim Hof.
Wim Hof. Yeah, I see him. I follow him on Instagram, and I've seen a bunch of people out there. So I think he breathes in through his mouth some, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested in your thoughts. So I actually I'm open to all new things, but I will admittedly tell you that I have totally blown him off. And here's why. Because if you, at least the science that I've read, and I admittedly have followed this Patrick McCowan's idea through nose breathing because I actually did it by mistake. So when I used to race bikes and even today when I ride on group rides that can be really competitive, how you tell if someone is tired so that you pass them and leave them, called dropping them, is when their mouth is open. Mm-hmm. And people can't control it, right? It's called on the rivet. You're redlined. You're just trying to hang on with the group. You can't keep track of everything. You're basically in fight or flight at that moment. Yep. You're in the moment regardless because that's what your brain puts you. And you'll see people, their mouth will be open. So and people used to, I rode in the early days I'm really grateful with really experienced winning racers. And I had rode with them, and they told me all the little things you look for, right? The first thing is their mouth. They'll hang their head. You'll move forward on your seat. And it's slight, but when you see it, you know they got a chink in the armor and you can attack them. So I started just before I did any breath work. This is like 10 years ago. I just started breathing through my nose, Whitney. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. And what happened was I was able to stay on the front of the Peloton almost to unbelief to myself.
Yep.
To the point where they were saying that I was on drugs. Right? Really. And I was like, wow, this keeps working. So I kept doing it. Later on, I read this book. I don't know where I saw it, called, The Oxygen Advantage with Patrick McCowan. And I was like, wow, I had that experience. So I'm telling you the story to admit that I had this thing that I discovered randomly because of something. I read this book that explained why I was so strong and why you should arguably never breathe through your mouth. So when I saw the Wim Hof thing, I'm admitting it. I was like, he breathes through his mouth. Like, maybe you don't have to take those deep breaths. If you just breathe through your nose, you would be putting the air in through all of the things that are designed by whatever human thing or whatever happened that designed us humans. And you're going to get all the oxygen you need. The breath holding, I agree with you. I do breath holding. I actually have that little thing I bought on Amazon that you can measure your oxygen level and I do that when I'm sitting after a meal or something, and it's right there. I make it really easy for myself. So I've dismissed this, but I follow the big wave surfer guys, and I see them. They all do that. They all do that exercise in the morning before they go on surfing on something that they're going to get held down. So,
let me ask you this. What if you combined your closed mouth breathing, which so the gentleman you're talking about that you interviewed, was he also on Tom Bilyeu's podcast, Impact?
He's gained, he's in a lot of, he just wrote another new book. He's gained a lot of traction because it works.
So I'm quite sure I listened to his podcast. He's the guy who talks all about how like the shape of our face has actually changed because we have become mouth breathers, and how chewing food actually has like impacted the amount. Yeah. Amazing guy. Such a fascinating topic. And I wholeheartedly agree, but much like, food and environment and all of these things that we were talking about are so customized for our bodies, I also think that there is some level of customization in our breath work. And while Wim Hof, I can totally understand why you discounted him because he trains with open mouth breathing, I think using his techniques with a closed mouth perspective for you may be like next level of what you're doing, right? So it may be that technique with closed mouth, you don't need to do it with open mouth. I've done it with closed and open. So it is not a technique where you can't do it if your mouth is closed. I think the idea is you can get more oxygen in if you're breathing. That's Wim Hof's, methodology. You can get more oxygen in if you're breathing. And actually your inhale is actually through your nose. It's the exhale that's through the mouth. So his system is not, in and out through the mouth. It's in through the nose, out through the mouth.
I got you.
I think you could certainly do that both through the nose. And what an interesting maybe up level that would be for you to customize his methodology of breathing for Brandon. Maybe that's even the best case scenario for everybody, and create kind of that additional level of then, okay, this guy has a good technique. I've adopted it for what I know to work best for my body, because this is a very unique and customized approach that I need to take with everything. And here's how that has kind of impacted my results. And I also think it's not limited to Wim Hof is great for, our practice, but it doesn't need to be Wim Hof for 10 minutes in the morning. Like maybe you do box breathing for 10 minutes in the morning, which for those of you who don't know is just, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, right? Like it's just very like cyclical type breathing. So I think it doesn't matter what the mechanism is. And I think you need to explore all of those various things in order to figure out what works for Brandon and what works for Whitney. But you need to start small and actually start doing those things in order to figure out like what that actually looks like for you. Which kind of takes us back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this, episode, which if we're looking to reduce our body inflammation, our negative inflammation in our body, how do we do that? Is it environment? Is it ice bath? Is it breath work? Is it nutrition? Is it sleep? Is it water? Is it food allergies? Like there's so many ways that you can tackle that. And it can feel very overwhelming, which is why, ask for help, get help, rely on people in this space who've done some of the legwork for you, and then just start small. Pick a couple that you can focus on, that you can, kind of touch on, practice with, and iterate on. Figure out what works best for you and your body in whatever season you're in.
I think that's a great summary. And I know we're getting to the top of the hour. You and I could probably talk for a really long time. I'm going to drop 3 HPTs at the end here. Last time you reminded me that I forgot, but I didn't forget today. I've gotten better. I think this might be episode 87, might even be 90.
All right.
So, getting close to 100. But I think what I've heard from you, you can disagree, which is start small, sleep, water, and a bonus is breath work. If you just did that, 1, 2, some combination, you're probably going to have some level of success defined as feeling better, more energy, potentially losing weight, or something like that.
All of the things. Yeah. I mean, I think losing weight is almost a byproduct of what you should really be focusing on, which is how do I feel? Right? Like if you feel good, it's going to be a lot easier to, adjust what your aesthetics look like. If you feel like crap, it's a lot harder to do that. And really, if you're losing weight and feeling like crap, how sustainable is that? Right? So I think the ultimate goal is how can I feel better every day? Right? And approaching things from that perspective is going to be, in my opinion, much more transformative than, I want to lose 5 pounds, or, I'm willing to fit into these jeans at any cost. I think that's a lot more detrimental to your long-term success.
Well, and I want to add this to this because I know you do it, which I actually think is super brave. I do it occasionally, not as much as you have, but which is the scale, to your point earlier in our discussion, is a metric, one of many. It's not the metric, but take a picture of yourself. You have a ton of pictures, which not a lot of women would do, like being pregnant. You've done this journey even before when you were a litigator, and I think got a lot of stress and anxiety, which we talked about, and that just causes weight gain. But posting that before and after picture. And what I do is I weigh myself and always take a picture in the mirror, only because what I really care about is what I look like. Well, and I've seen, I think Chris, you probably put him up to it, but Chris did that too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, much to your point, there's so many metrics for what is happening inside our bodies. And I can visibly see inflammation on my body. Sometimes the scale doesn't move at all. Usually it does. Usually that's the first metric for me, that my body is a little extra inflamed. But sometimes it doesn't move at all, and I'm feeling less inflamed. How come that's not showing on the scale? If you're taking photos and you're visibly smaller, or better yet, even taking measurements. If you don't want to take photos, just take a measurement of your waist and track that, right? Like, you need to have some sort of metric to track yourself against, because otherwise it's just, it goes back to that accountability. Like, what are you basing any of your success based off of? And I think it's important to take an evaluation and map some metrics for how you're feeling too, right? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is my energy level today? I mean, if my body looks the way I want it to look, but I'm a level 1, I'm exhausted energy wise, I'm tired, I need to go back to bed, like that cost of what it's come at for me to look a certain aesthetic way has not been worth what that energy level is to me. Everybody has different metrics for, how they want to feel and how that equates to how they look. But for me, man, if I'm not energized while doing it, no thanks.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for being generous with your time, taking time out with Dexter, thank Chris, because I'm guessing he's in the background somewhere watching him. And I want to have you back on to talk about how you actually have started your business. I was talking to Joe Tiano the other day, who I know we have mutual friend, actually how we met. And I actually had asked him about you, which maybe, no, your Instagram post was one of the sparks, but whatchamacallit, love to have you back and talk about how you, it sounds like things are going great and you've effectively taken, well, you're reinventing yourself is what you're doing and creating a consulting company that's advising technology. Are you just posting on the Instagram? I want to help in some way. Like people can follow you on Instagram. How can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been admittedly less active there just because bandwidth, with a new baby and with how busy we've just been on the business front. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Whitney Stefko Dover, which is a mouthful, but you'll have that name, I'm sure, on this episode in some way, shape, or form. So you can follow me on Instagram. That's a great place to connect with me in general. Also on LinkedIn. So, either place is kind of where I'm spending time. But yeah, just in general, loving connecting with anybody who's interested in kind of that betterment of, life and longevity and living just more fulfilled, lives, I think, in general.
Well, hey, thanks a lot. I'll reach out to you. Tell Chris, thank you for watching Dexter. And I'll be watching these cold immersions and trying to figure out how I'm going to get this bucket of water into my backyard somehow to do
Sounds great. You let us know if we need to have any sort of chats with Yvette about why she needs to get on board with this ice bath situation too.
it. Yeah, I think that's going to be an in-person discussion, but we're going to come to Arizona. We're going to drive the RV. I want to see Joe Tiano. You guys have incredible biking paths like I've seen nowhere. Can't think of many places in the world that I've ever seen, especially Scottsdale has uh, just an incredible place. So we'll be able to link up and um, talk then. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds great. Great to connect with you, Brandon. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.